In a world yearning for change, there exists a community of visionaries and innovators, united by a common goal: to solve Earth's biggest challenges. From climate action to quality education, we're tackling all 17 Sustainable Development Goals reassembled as 10. We embody sustainability, unity, and empathy. Our character and reliability shine as beacons of hope. As role models for future generations, we're building a world where wisdom and consciousness rise, harmonizing life with nature and all species. Join us. Together, let's create a balanced, sustainable future for all.
Hello, hello. I think we had a double here with the video or not. Welcome, Telalish people. I can hear myself twice for some reason. All right. I hope now it's good. And yeah, sometimes Slack just gives us a little bit of headaches. And so welcome to our episode today, amazing TLL-ish people. And this comes from TLL, Tech Leadership Lab. And at some point inside our group, we decided to just have this kind of term that it's also fun and cheeky a little bit, and we can just have it in a fun way for everyone. So we decided to take it on, and it means basically that you are a person who is concerned for the future and wants to solve the SDGs as soon as possible. SDGs being the Sustainable Development Goals determined by the UN. And we are here to amplify this process, amplify the voices, and just create that kind of positive tipping point moment, not like it's used in the climate, to bring things forward with a smile on our face, because we don't need to think in a doom and gloom way to solve serious issues, because humanity can thrive today with the help of technology, but in a very, very positive type of style. And this is why we are here at Tech Leadership Lab with you, Christina Imre, the founder of TLL. And today's mission, we start and continue the dialogues after our summit that I hope that you saw. And if not, please just go on our YouTube channel, and you will have all the replays there, because we had an amazing summit, the intersection of climate, AI, and humanity, with 32 speakers, experts from around the globe. It was a global summit where we wanted to tackle what's next and what we should do in a way that we can solve the SDGs, starting with the climate and with the help of AI, while preserving our human traits, and make it in a way that we can keep be and becoming happier, not like this type of depressive people that are don't know what will happen with their future. And we will have our first draft, not the first draft, the first, let's say, consensus document in a very simplified, general way out next week. We are working on that. And we already had during the summit an amazing discussion around this. What we want to achieve is for you to just see what would be the steps, you and the whole world and our decision makers and policy makers, where we can agree to have a consensus, because the term is super, super important. And that's why we will have the first document out next week. And following, we will have multiple versions for different stakeholders in a way that things are very, very clear. And our discussions, what we started today, and to match amazing speakers from the summit identified, because during the summit and through the way of deciding what should be the best topics to discuss, what should be the panels, who should be the speakers, we were pretty due diligent about this, and we wanted to bring multiple brains together that can tackle the situations with climate and technology from multiple perspectives, and thinking globally, because this is very, very important. What we need now to do, it's a global vision and a global mindset. And today we have a matchmaking done between, let me present you, Richard James MacCowan. You are now on top of the screen on my view, and advocate Divya Dwivedi from India. And so they were on 2 panels because they also took part of the consensus panel, the draft of the consensus document. And so they are very, very close to everything that happened around the summit. This is a very, very good point. Then we identify that there is a lot of synergy from multiple perspectives about the way they see the future, but also what they are doing in real time. And I'm super, super happy to have you back with us. And this will just showcase that we can start acting on what we discussed, because it's enough of just talking. We can go to the next level. And that's why we have such an important discussion today, where we want to innovate for equity, and biomimicry with tech solutions for SDG resolution is something we decided to have today. Richard, Divya, while studying all the speakers and listening to everything, because of the consensuses, because we wanted to do a good enough job for the global population and understand what we want to tackle here, you became one of my favorites because I started to know you through the summit and before, and because I understood that you're coming from a very, very positive, good place where you truly want the good for humanity. And this is an important aspect, because Tech Leadership Lab has the word leadership in the middle, and that's not for by chance there. It means that we want leaders, we want people who embody the good values and traits of a good human. Because the new generations, and everyone, me included, I want to see on screens, on social, everywhere, people who I can say, wow, what a cool human, what a good human. And I can sense that he or she wants the good for me, and also for my kids, and for those who are coming for after us. And you too are embodying these traits, not to mention the complex background that you have. Richard, you are coming with the biomimicry, and the way you like to say it, that it's nature-inspired innovation. So it's very good for today's topic. And you do have that kind of scrutiny. And this is the personal way to describe both of you this time, because I know you more. I love the way that you are not easy to be fooled around. You fact check everything. You go talk with people. You take the documents. You think it twice, 3 times before you say, yes, that's it. This is a good idea. You put very, very good questions. You all the time, you just put our mind to think about, okay, we have that, but it's good enough what we have today, what we should do. So you do have this kind of inquisitory, but in a funny way, interesting way, mindset, that it's so brilliant for us to have a very valuable discussion. And everyone is invited to just comment, because we will be on the comments. And welcome, John, Martin, Dries. I'm super happy to see you here, and everyone who didn't comment it on YouTube or on LinkedIn, because we are streaming live, just please do, because we will listen to you, we will read your questions, and we will answer them. So Richard, very happy to have you here. And Divya, Dwivedi, now we are talking also gender equality and inequality. And I started with you, Richard, because you're in the middle of 2 women here. Divya, your work is so impressive. Every time when I'm listening to you, and when we had our first talk, the way you approach the full aspect of humanity. You from India, you are very open and connected to everything that goes around AI and tech in the world, including Silicon Valley, including AI legislation in Europe, including the people who are doing the work to have a safe AI. And so this type of work, it's so precious. And the way you tackle it, it's okay, cool people, I'm a techie, I'm a tech geek, I like this, but hey, stop. We here in India, we are mostly agricultural culture. Not just we, but many billions of people are having their means through agriculture. We need to consider infrastructure. We need to consider equality. How is that possible that we have more women in agriculture than men, but when it comes to decision making, they are nowhere to be found, or the percentage doesn't show the value they are bringing in? And so you pinpoint, okay, people, it's cool we have this tech, but the decision-making aspect, equality aspect is not met. Then what are we doing with the general population or with different type of countries? Here you have technology because you're in Silicon Valley or in a technologically developed perspective and place. How about the people who don't have the basic needs met? How we will align them? Because, okay, we are thinking how AI can solve everything, but what are we doing with them if we left them behind? Because then it's about sustainability and resilience and adaptation, about what's coming in climate, that climate is connected to everything. So with this kind of introduction, and with your broad backgrounds, both of you, I'm super, super happy to just listen and learn from both of you and have a dialogue in a way that you will have a back and forth, and you can even question each other about your viewpoints, because I know Richard has multiple projects that align with yours, Divya, and that you are also included in multiple projects around the world and in Europe, where Richard is based. And so would love to know, maybe at the beginning, just present whatever I missed to tell about you, and how do you want to approach our today's discussion about innovation, biomimicry and innovation, and equality, of course. Who wants to start?
Ladies first.
Of course.
Thank you. But that's also not very good for gender equality, I would say again. It's never
Say it.
ladies or gents
Say
first.
it. Yeah, and we want to learn your views, because we do
But
mistakes about
anyways,
that, for sure.
being almost understanding about equality, that being the fun part, it's always necessary to understand that it's not picking up the points, it's about understanding the inherent psychology behind those points also, where we are coming from, what we are coming from, and what all we have come through in a whole life cycle. What I understand about biomimicry is also very important, how it works, what kind of limitations of living being, which is the literal meaning of biomimicry, are we making, how are we trying to understand it, what kind of engineering is involved, what kind of innovation is related to that kind of process. But when it comes to understanding equality, why I said that, because we inherently are brought up in such a manner that once we start thinking about discrimination or understanding about how we want to shape our future, we start questioning. And that's the point where everyone wants to stop. Mostly the people who are supposed to be answering our queries are the first ones who stop us from asking those questions. So always you'll find there are conflicting views when it comes to even talking about equality. And it's not about gender equality, it's about understanding relation to equality. There are people who talk about why women should be called first or men should be called first, why there should be a segregation in gender and all those things. But what they do not understand, that as human beings also we have to be treated equally, and that's where equality starts. And that's where discrimination or any kind of privileges which are given to unequal and equals comes into picture, and that's where law comes in. And that's why I enjoy connecting all the dots, although I'm not a very good person to say that I have already connected it, but I've tried to connect it. So when we talk about biomimicry kind of innovation and we want to understand how it is going to impact our SDG goals, we still are not focusing on the major point which Christina rightly pointed out, that we are not thinking about the people who are in the very start of that whole life cycle. There is a whole pyramid, and we may be in somewhere in the middle or the top of that particular pyramid. But the people who are actually building that particular agricultural aspect or the whole scenario for us to live on, we are not considering their needs. We are not considering how they are moving forward, what kind of things we are giving to them, what kind of equality are we giving to them. Are we really talking about equality in true senses? And that's where again I'll say humanity comes into picture, that how much human we are from our hearts is what comes out of our mouths or brain, because that is how we see the society is changing. Sitting in AC rooms, we can always plan very good things for the society. But at the end, once we are on the ground, there is a possibility we'll miss out on something. And that's where I was very fascinated about the work which Richard is doing. He actually is doing a lot of work in Kerala and other spaces, but still there is a lot of work to be done, and we need a lot of people to be here. And when you called me to talk about this, I was thinking, how much should I talk about innovation, how much should I talk about agriculture and innovation in agriculture also, because it's not easy to implement that. Recently I visited my ancestral village, and there were a lot of talk about implementing innovation in agriculture that we do. After 3 4 days of brainstorming and talking about organic farming, talking about so many other things in perspective, what I and my partner realized, that it's not easy to change the whole psychology of growing the grains or working on fields. So to let people understand why innovation, especially AI enabled innovation, is important to be implemented, and we have to change that psychological perspective also. They have to come out of that particular thought process that technology will take away our jobs. Especially here, women will be very helpful, because if they are educated in right manner, I believe personally that they will be able to have that particular change brought in the whole understanding of this concept. So yes, I'll stop here for right now for the very start of the show and request Richard to take it forward. But that is what I feel. We need to educate first, even before we want to innovate something. And that should come from the very lower level, not from top to bottom. We have to start working from bottom to up.
This
Thank you.
was a very good start, and you are the voice of reason in my mind, and it was one of those connectors that I had every time when I was thinking about the speakers and what we had around the summit. So Richard, she just threw you inside the middle of the aspects that we can consider when it comes to biomimicry and equality and agriculture and innovation. Go ahead, because I know that you have tons of ideas here.
Yeah, next time I'll just interrupt instead of being polite.
Okay. Yeah. I have a question.
It's interesting. Yeah, as Divya was talking, it was if you go to the early days of Darwin and a lot of early science, it was very much male-dominated societies. Kind of ideals were passed, adopted into the studies of evolution and natural selection. So it is very much kind of that bias that was put in place. So I think the qualities, we've got all these biases that we've inherently grown up with, and that's very, very tricky to actually, remove yourselves. I try this every time we work on a project. When I wasn't leading the project in India, far from it, because it was a sociologist in the team with academics from Southampton, and she's from India, and then we had our Indian team, and it was about going in and saying, right, we don't know what we're going to do here. The project was about gender equality in fishing communities, very similar, obviously, to agriculture, and it was about listening to the people. What information can we gather? What data we can collect, and climate impacts, COVID impacts, why are people not wanting to work in agriculture and fishing communities anymore when they'd rather go and work in cities? Because it's hard work. It's not safe. There's all these other issues of, people want to be, if you're working in these things, you're disconnected from your friends. Everybody else wants to work in the city. So, it is a challenge to delve into this kind of thing. I mean, one of the times I certainly share the example of a slime mold, which has got 832 different sexes, which is an interesting one that's been used for optimizing transport routes and various other things. But back to the point, it's the way I see that biomimicry can help with this is by understanding, looking at kind of things in a different way, flipping them around. But there is a bias inherently in there as well. If we try and think there are rules and principles, and because there are no rules in the natural world, there's only exceptions. You think there's one overarching principles, but every time you see that, there's going to be something that breaks at the same time. I do sometimes worry at times as well. We do get over relied. Is biomimicry, nature-inspired innovation, is it part of a hype cycle as well, where everybody wants to do it. Same with AI. I almost see it sometimes as a gadget. Maybe nature-based solutions are different, that, you know, everybody wants to fit it into what they're doing. And until you actually realize how it works in your workflow and it's useful, instead of just chucking things out there, you know, almost post-rationalizing because nature's better. Well, nature just is, because aren't we part of nature as well? But so this really goes back to what Christina was saying. I kind of challenge a lot of this and actually start looking into it, interrogating it, and looking at for the, you know, what logical reasoning is in there. And I actually found something the other day on April the 1st. I don't know if around the world that people always, you know, April Fool's Day. And this little thing that I found said April the 1st is the only day of the year that people critically evaluate things they find on the internet before accepting them as true. Shouldn't that be the same as everything? You know, every time we see some news posted on social media. But I do think that there is a value of building in, you know, as we head towards, you know, actual artificial intelligence in this great hype cycle we're having with artificial general intelligence as well. You're seeing more and more people using it as a co-pilot. You're seeing people developing businesses with, you know, no coding. You know, I find it extremely useful because there's aspects out there now where, you know, there's a European network of natural history museums where they're cataloging, digitizing everything they've got. And that's a vast treasure trove. Not only you're getting, you know, their collections, looking at the materials of plants and animals, the structures, finding out the notes that they found as well from people collecting them all the way back to the Beagle and Darwin, and actually understanding how people were analyzing in this as well. And it's really, really fascinating actually delving into this and understanding that, you know, the role of women in society. I sometimes feel I get a bit biased because my great grandmother won an OBE for services to agriculture back in the early 20th century. She was an Irish immigrant, so she's obviously studied potatoes and potato blight. She was known as the potato queen. I'm not saying that's passed on to me, but it's just an interesting thing to kind of see, you know, how do we understand these, you know, the challenges people face?
Yeah, this is one of the things, you know, we are all biased. That's the starting point. And we need to challenge those biases at the beginning. They are embedded inside our brains because of different reasons and how we grew up and our ancestors. So before you start to decide what's next and what you should do, just question, okay, what type of biases I am under right now when I'm looking at this frame, like gender inequality and technology, because, okay, we can solve environmental issues, but how we do that in an equal way where we involve all genders, and we don't have something like that, okay, if we are in a system where men are still ruling the world because of the background we are coming from, how can we address that in a way that, okay, we are acting equally, but here the equally is another thing, because strength wise, men are more powerful because they have more muscles and they don't have children. But then again, you do have the children aspect. I mean, women are having the babies, and that is by itself a huge endeavor to consider today's society where you don't have the support system. This is one of the things I would just start to address. Because how do you want a woman, every woman who has kids, in my view, it is a superwoman, a superhuman, not woman, superhuman. That's for one. Because, and then if it works and does all of those issues, the society and also women, because they wanted to compensate the past, they said, oh, I can do it as a man. Okay, but you have 10 times more jobs to do around the house, about the kids, about that, and you don't have the support system. You want to go and work right now in a tech company or everywhere where it is like 8 or more hours a day, but also keep up with the kids and everything that is expected, presumed, labeled that you should do it because you are the woman. And so you are acting and working and you're overworked and overwhelmed and the pressure is high to prove yourself. In career, a woman needs to prove 10 times more something, not 10. It's just a number. It's not facts. Now I'm just saying it has also the expectations, that silent expectation that you should also do that because you're a woman, and the man doesn't do that kind of things, and then the men clubs and so on. And so I'm just opening up a frame of discussions about things that we are all thinking around the world. This is what I'm doing, because the Tech Leadership Lab is not about just putting again the garbage under the mat. First thing, if we want to have this kind of culture about women can lead and can lead, because they already overtook through history multiple jobs. They are the multitaskers of the world because they need to fit in multiple aspects. But they still are seen as inferior for many men in this world. This is an injustice that needs to be a little bit addressed, but also can be labeled like, oh, okay, we want to behave this way, we are tough, we do the same things as men. No, we do have differences. So here I do see the beauty of differences that we can cultivate in our society, but also the expectations to be realistic. And if you want to have future generations, you do need to create that kind of support system around someone who has kids and wants a career as well, because today we don't have that, only in a couple of cultures. Yeah, so I know I threw out multiple ways, but this was just an example about the discussions I would love to have in TLR without just fearing that everyone will think, oh my God, you're racist, or you're thinking that about men or women. No, I don't think anything. I'm just throwing out ideas and things that people are thinking and their experiences from their past. And we need to tackle these things openly. So I'm very curious, Divya, what do you think about my what I just said here?
I would say, wow, that you brought up this topic. I just love talking about this inequality in trying to find equality, but women are usually lesser paid for the same amount of work they do in public space. And they are literally not paid when they are working at home, that is in private space. So you can understand the inequality they see every day. If they're not working, if they're not earning, they are not getting anything paid at home. But when they are working, they are getting paid lesser for the same amount of labor they put in, be it intellectual labor or physical labor. And it's prominent and it's easily available data that even in agricultural sector they get paid less, or it's an academic field, any field whatsoever. Women inherently are paid less for whatever reason. That being said, when we start to understand how technology is going to uplift the condition or help us, it may have helped in a certain manner, but it cannot fully help unless we as humans understand that we have to first think about equality and then think about any innovation whatsoever is happening. Because when we are talking about biomimicry, it's mostly about understanding how animals, planet, or in reality nature takes its course and makes sure that everything is equally treated on earth. So practically we have to learn from nature how it maintains its equality, how it maintains that particular diligence, that okay, this species has to survive, else other species will have the same kind of impact and they will not survive. And that's why we need to connect everything to how we learn from climate, how we learn from environment, how we learn from nature in that whole perspective. Because unless we are open to this particular discussion of understanding the nature's course, we won't be, in real terms, we won't be humans. Now that is one point. Then another perspective about we as social animals, we have to understand that we work more better when we are surrounded by positive society, positive people who are around us and who keep on motivating us. because there are many times that humans have a jealousy perspective also, that they will be more jealous if someone else is growing, or if someone has a different innovative idea, they'll try to pull their legs. But unless we resolve that particular issue inside us, there is no way we can grow in a manner we want to grow. All of this may seem to be psychology centric, but I feel like as we grow older, as we grow in terms of human life, we grow old, we learn more and more every day. And I practically learn from everything I go around with, be it people who are educated in terms of educational degrees or in terms of life education. Everyone has some saying. As I said, recently we went to our ancestral village. The women over there are very dominant, supposed to be dominant. Now what I learned from there was they never realize in their whole lifetime that even though they are said to be dominating, every decision that they make comes from the male counterpart they have, because it all depends on how the whole scenario in that particular household has been developed for her to decide in favor of that male counterpart. Now it is not the same in nature. Nature does not discriminate between the species, it does not discriminate in between gender also. So we have to learn that there are n number of learnings. And the kind of point which you keep on raising, I have so many things about biases, the inherent biases which we have, the ones which we keep on learning with everyday countering of other people. It's as if that we are living in a, I would say, parallel universe, or maybe a mirrored universe, where we are not realizing how badly we are utilizing our environment per se. We, even if we have laws, we are not taking care of them. And again, I'll come back to the same point, that women are not educated enough to make sure, in order to understand how to take care of the environment. Even this small chunk of help, a household help in taking care of environment, how you use the water, how less noise you make, how you use electricity, how you use that particular cooked food, that you don't throw it away, you utilize, how you recycle things, are very minuscule level of educational system. But they also are not aware of that, that they should have been using the garbage in a diligent manner. How will that come? That comes from education. And somehow that education is definitely missing. And education does not always mean only having college degrees. Education is the kind of knowledge which we get from our parents, we get from our grandparents, we get from our society and people we know. To my shock, I usually see women not realizing how badly they are using water resources, how badly they use the society next door. They literally throw the garbage without realizing that they are impacting their children. And these are very minute things which maybe someone else will not register. But I feel that even if you are making a noise at night, it is impacting at least 10 people who are around you. You should be mindful of not doing that. For that, we don't need laws to call, let's say, 911 or other 112 or something else. We should be diligent in ourselves not to do that. But that is missing. That's because the woman of the household is not diligently understanding why we have to teach our kids. So I start from very basic thing. I never try and do anything which is too big for me. I just try to do it from very small psychological perspective, that why are you doing this? Don't you feel this is absurd? Don't you feel you should not tear up your books? There are many kids who just tear it up. Mothers, they do not realize, they never tell them, don't do this, don't do any absurd activity in public. So what happens later? Government has to, or legislation has to come up with laws in order to make sure that people don't do nuisance on public spaces. So it all starts from your house. If you educate your, I would say, women and men equally, I think our society will be better. And yes, then we will learn better from biomimicry. That's my part.
Oh my
I
God,
totally
Divya.
agree. It's interesting when you were speaking there, is we've put everything into little silos, haven't we? Men and women. children and people in careers, and then people over 50 are, oh, you can't be doing anything. Everything's siloed, and it's the same. You know, I speak a lot at universities, speak to younger children, and you see all these little silos popping up. And I love teaching at university. It doesn't pay very well, but you kind of learn what they're getting taught and what different skills. There's a massive skills gap about learning about life, different industries, and all these things that, you know, more people need to be generalists and learn about different things and trying to remove all the bias. It's interesting you're talking about bias there. We're working as part of a collaborative on project in Nepal. We were working with an AI company, and we had to train the AI to remove all the biases around the uses of cow urine, because they were wanting to use the cow urine as a way to actually use as fertilizer. But if you start putting that straight in from what these standard models have been trained, all these, going back to indigenous cultures, it's not there because it's a very much Western approach. So we had to, you had to remove all the, and it was quite a challenge to do. But once you did that, you start finding more useful information out there, because a lot of these models are just, trained by, people on the West Coast of the US. It's good that some companies are coming up and developing ethical AI and allowing this, but you do have to really, like the quote about the 1st of April, you have to really take it with a pinch of salt. You can't just delve in and go, this is exactly what's true, just because something says it. So I do think there's a change, and there was a really good university. It was a school, actually. I gave a talk to some of their students. It's called the School of Humanity. There's a few of them popping up based in Dubai. And the students learn by projects. So if they want to learn about mathematics, they could go learning about ecosystems and ecology. So there'll be about project-based initiatives. So you're learning about cultural differences. Because the students are all from different backgrounds, you're learning about how different people brought up to, counting systems, all these different things from different cultures, different languages as well, and you're all putting it together a project. And that's fascinating because you're learning, and useful as well because you're learning, we're in a global society, so we have to start learning from different cultures as early as possible, and learning respect, learning about different religions as well, learning about different way people think, and it's those are the key skills that I see are missing these days, that everybody wants to rush. What I've been having a discussion with a professor in the US, and one of the things is everybody wants to create the next app. Rush. Become a billionaire, millionaire just by making an app. Fail fast, fail quick, move on to the next thing. We can't do that if we're looking at, the sustainable development goals and actually the planet. We've got to be careful, because if you go in and try and do these quick initiatives, certain aspects of rewilding might go vastly wrong, and you end up with cascading negative impacts, and then ecosystems collapse. So, past the tipping point. So we have to sort of slow down and actually, understand it, understand how people are doing, because that's the kind of management consultant helicopter in approach of, right, we'll come in, chuck a bunch of ideas at you. Here's a load of post-it notes. Let's get everybody excited, jump around the room, have lots of coffee, and then they'll fly out again. And what you're left with? A drawer full of post-it notes, 99 rubbish solutions and one less rubbish solution.
You have no idea how happy this discussion makes me, because this is what our world needs. I mean, you both are absolutely amazing. Divya, I started to say, oh my God, you pinpointed topics I don't recall I heard during many, many years in the open. And it just connects, because I learned so much through the summit and before, because I said, okay, let's become a climate expert with the help of AI. Give me what I should learn and so on. So I learned a lot of things, and it was part of the core team. And inside TLR, we discussed that, wow, I thought that I am pretty okay-ish, literal-ish around climate and what's happening in the world. But when we started to prepare for the summit, I just realized that I didn't know anything, almost the important aspects that are so connected to us. And this connects to what you said, education. One of the movies I've just seen and the documentary, there is an island where it's almost like an artificial island close to Colombia, where are people like living in a very small, the smallest island, I believe, and many people there. There is no privacy. Everything is just like interlinked. There are thousands of people living together on a piece of land there, and they never left that little island. And as they are growing and having families and so on, they created a mess around them. The garbage and everything that is around that island is just horrendous. And they're thinking, yeah, so it is not just about that we need to rely that we should have common sense as humans and we should have that kind of intuition as humans because we evolved so much. No, because we lost a lot of those intuitions like animals didn't if they are in the wild, because of social norms, because of we just get it easier, because we didn't have the elders to teach us this kind of things. And so today you have this disparity between people who have no idea why to not throw out garbage in the water and then swim there and drink that same type of water. They think it's normal and it's just part of life. And you would say, oh, but common sense, the smell, don't you just like what it's there? It's their only universe. And if you don't provide the alternatives, you don't give the data, then you can lose everything. That's why one of the solutions we had in our tech pitches panel, and it's Mutambei Karaoke from Kenya, and he develops that edge AI system that people who are in disadvantaged areas or they cannot afford a mobile phone over than $40, and that's a lot of work for them, to get access to AI and the latest information. And what you're saying, Divya, is now that it's the same applies in villages for women, in agriculture. I could see this like AI bots in every village, to have AI bot enabled for the elderly with tutorials how to use it in your native language, and just go there and see how to crop food, how to do that kind of thing, and then connect with predictions around climate and weather, and have that kind of basic educational knowledge in a way that you can take the right decisions for yourself. Right? How do you see this?
Shall I go? We're trying to do that in Kerala. So we've developed an app that's looking at climate impacts as well as actually educating people about the impacts they're making as they're drying the fish in the fishing communities. But we've also then learned from it's an ecosystem-based approach to policy recommendations, as well as actually giving greater voices to the women who are working in the fishing community as well. So it's more developed. So there's an issue is actually understanding so they can carry the fish, because they do a lot of the work. The men are out in the boats. So it's about, not always having the high-tech stuff. I don't think everywhere needs AI, because sometimes cultures may just say, well, why? What's the point? I think as long as it's something that can actually support and actually give them the right answers is better.
I would see this differently, just because we are now in this way where climate, everything is rapidly changing. And so the traditional education, it's not keeping updated what happens with climate. And you might create a crop or you might create your season based on what your elders told you. But if you are connected to AI and the latest predictions AI tools, then you might see that, a drought is coming, or in 7 days with 7 days before you want to just plant something, or that there is a hurricane in the way, or any kind of preventive systems, or wildfires might appear, because there are different hot zones for that created. And so now we do need this type of real-time signalizing systems that AI can help us provide.
Well, yeah, you can do that. I mean, if you're using remote sensing, whether it's smart sensors on the ground or using remote sensing using satellite imagery, basing that way. So you could come up with these predictive models to a point. You've seen that after the tsunami hit Pacific Ocean and various other early warning systems. And you could also then have people with smartphones get connected in, so they're giving feedback to the system as well. Why don't farmers have small sensors that they could test water quality, soil health, all fed into a system, but then they could get paid for their data that's getting uploaded as well. So micropayments that way, instead of a singular, it goes up and everybody else gets uses out of it. Because it goes back to, remember, was it when Mark Zuckerberg was first trying to get Facebook into rural communities, and then actually, was it just about him trying to save the world? That goes back to kind of Silicon Valley, that comedy show where everybody who's developing an AI tool wants to save the world. Or is he just trying to line his pockets and sell more advertising? So it's about that careful balance, because people will still turn around and go, what's in it for me? Or how is this going to impact my community? Because there will be a level of distrust, because it will, it's just the phrase neo-colonialism. You're flying in there trying to sell them solutions that maybe they don't need.
And I'm very curious, based on what we discussed, Divya, and especially that you have the expertise in tech law and gender inequality, and you are heavily involved in everything around SDGs. How would you see this solve? Like have the women to have access to AI and the latest innovations, but this needs to come from legislators as well. Based on what you said, obviously it's inevitable if we want speed. So how would you create frameworks, or how can legal frameworks be designed to address these issues?
I'll first bring you to the basic issue of fulfilling the needs. There are three things: needs, desire, and needs, wants, and desires. So once your needs are fulfilled, you have wants, and then once they are fulfilled, you have desires. And that's privileged group who have desires, not the people who are needy. So why I said that? Because you move to innovation, or you start finding things that solve your problem from technology perspective once your needs are fulfilled. So the basic need has to be fulfilled first. Now, when we are talking about climate change, again, I'll come back to the same concept of nature, understanding everything in perspective of nature. We have to understand that why nature can take its own course, because it is fulfilled in itself. It has completed its needs. It does not have wants and desires. But we as humans have n numbers or endless amount of needs, wants, and desires. Any country which is a developing one usually has its needs to be fulfilled first. If it is semi-developed country, then also it will have some wants. If it's a developed country, it will have its desires, the citizens specifically. So as per that segregation, legislations are developed. So a developing country will have a legislation which will help its citizens in order to fulfill and complete their needs. So that being said, when we are talking about AI Act in terms of how it works in developing country, how it will work in semi-developed country, and how it will work in developed country, are entirely different. And what are the needs are supposed to be taken care of when legislation is being worked upon. Similarly, when I talk about my country, we are a developing, booming country, but developing one. We are a booming economy, but we are developing. So our population is also a question. Now that particular population has its own needs. We are the youngest population in the world. Their needs are endless. They need to have their desires fulfilled later. But first they have to understand how to take care of that particular population in our own territory. Now comes the innovation part. When we talk about AI legislations, AI will come way later for our needs to be fulfilled. Even before that, we have to educate ourselves as in how AI is going to help our population in the best manner possible. That was the reason why our government decided that right now we'll not be directly working on AI Act. But later, they realized that since it is developing so fast, we have like most number of AI labs. We are working tremendously on technology development. Because of our economy, the way it is growing, we are leaning more on technology. So the legislation decided that okay, we'll work on this. So that will be a slow thing. And this I am comparing only with my country because that is what I do a lot of research on. When we move to developed countries like Europe or US or any other jurisdiction for that matter, which is a developed one, their needs and wants are fulfilled. They already have a lot of things which are in place to support their citizens. We are still building it. So, for them to develop an AI Act in order to make sure that regulations are perfectly in place when it comes to how technology will take care, how technology will enhance our living standards, is the question which they ask. For us, the thing is how technology is going to help our needs. So you have to understand why legislations will be different. Now, that being said, I would move on to try and explain this concept of understanding now again equality in technology. Equality in technology will only come when the people who are developing that technology do not have that particular bias in them. That technological bias, I would say that societal bias, or there are n number of biases which are inherently there. They have to come out of that particular biases vicious circle. Then only they will be able to develop such kind of technology which will not be inherently impacting our society in a different manner. That is where neuro rights and brain effects come into picture. How consumerism is taking place, what kind of data is being used. I won't use such words like manipulation or discrimination without having a consequence. So one has to understand the kind of input we are giving when it comes to data. Data is today considered to be electricity or oil of everything. For AI also, data is the biggest thing. Without data, without feeding in data, there is no development of AI. It will only feed on data to develop itself. We are the biggest provider of data also because of the population, but and also because of the kind of internet uses that we have, web development. So technology people have to be absolutely diligent, and that is why we came up with a legislation related to personal data privacy also, and which talks about data localization. So all these things are in one perspective trying to make sure the rights of our citizens are safeguarded. Once that is done, there is a possibility, I'm just saying possibility, that we will then move on to understand how to take care of the wants of our citizens. So all these things will take some time when it comes to developing countries. So that is what my understanding has been, even if we are trying to develop that. So we have to fulfill the needs first. Make sure that we understand what are people's needs as well. Everyone has a different need. We are three people sitting here, Richard, you and me, Christina. Now, all of us have different paths of life from where we have reached this space. You have different desires, needs, and wants. I have different, and Richard has different. So we have to understand how and from which background we come up, what kind of dreams we have, and why we want to save the climate. You may be trying to save the climate in a different manner, in a different need. I may be trying to save the climate or even talk about saving the climate in a very different perspective. Same as with Richard. His motives will be different, yours will be different, and mine will be different because we are different people. So we have to understand, we have to find that one common footing for anything to work out properly. And for that, I always keep on saying we have to go out in on the ground and understand the need of the ground also, because obviously that is also a part where we grow our trees and they in turn give us oxygen. So we have to think about that. I guess I should stop now. Richard is talking about I don't need shampoo.
Muted. Next time when I will set up this talk with you two,
No, it's
we
very
need
interesting because I
2 hours.
used to work.
We need the
I
2
used to work
hours.
for a company. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I used to work for a company. We used to use choice theory, consumer choice theory, to help shape the retail mix in shopping centres and hotels. And you would ask people various options to give them, do you want plants X or Y, lighting A or B, food choices, and you would actually uncover it. And you do that with children as well. Whenever we've done workshops with kids, is actually, they'll come up with some fantastical ideas for designing a playground, landing for spaceships, places to, play around and everything like that. But you'll end up, you go underneath the wants and you find their needs, because actually, your kids are just screaming for McDonald's. It's not McDonald's they're wanting, really. It's just fast, quick food that they can have that tastes the same as back home or something like that.
You might want to answer the question from Dries. How can we utilize biomimicry as a framework to align our educational system with nature conservation and human well-being?
How can we do that? So one of the key things is, you got to give everybody a basic understanding of evolutionary biology and ecology. I'm seeing a lot more people out there claiming to be practicing biomimicry, but getting the science completely wrong. Now, that can be all right if you're developing a product like a mobile phone or a bath tap. But when it's delving into looking at our environment, ecosystems, by getting that wrong can have massively terrible impacts. So it's about understanding, going back and actually delving into what is evolutionary biology, understanding, evolution is unintentional. Nature doesn't really optimize or maximize. It's about the best fit. That goes all the way back to Darwin, the fittedness. So, depending on how fast an animal runs to catch its prey, it's burning off as much energy as it fits for that time it's feeding, or how much, material that the tree's using, these kind of things. So this is really where we can build into this. The nature conservation, there's a really good article about people, they'll talk of like the mother tree or learning from mycelium. It's all a big symbiotic cooperative network, but actually that's wrong, because it's about, actually there's no such thing as a mother tree, because a lot that was used as a kind of anthropomorphic way of describing it. So and also, if you get that science wrong, we'll end up protecting species that may die out naturally because of climate change, because we have to start understanding adaptation. So that's where I really see these things moving forward. We really have to understand what the natural world does and doesn't do, instead of learning from kind of pop science and misconceptions. Because I have arguments still with people who think nature doesn't waste. Because first of all, their argument is humans waste, nature doesn't. So you're comparing one species against all species, ignoring the time constraints, and the life on an entire planet, there'll be no waste, but there'll be nothing left. But if you consider it geological, ecological timeframes, and actually an ant colony wastes a lot. A seagull that steals your fries from when you're down at the seaside wastes a lot, because it poos everywhere. So if you break it down and actually understand this complexity, you've actually got more potential for solutions.
Yeah, and we sometimes give too much complexity and superiority to other creatures or nature just because we don't like what we are doing or what's happening. And so there are so many aspects to tackle here, right?
And marketing's jumped into that. It's a naturalistic fallacy. Because it's nature, it's better. You see that on shampoo bottles. I don't know why I'm getting drawn back into the shampoo bottle thing, but I did a panel session a couple of years ago where one of the panelists was talking about learning from rats to regrow hair, and one of my friends was on the panel and WhatsApp me going, a bit late for you, Richard. Anyway.
And you also mentioned inside during the summit with the survival of the cheapest, and that was very interesting for us to acknowledge, because it is indeed, when we are going now in the future and we need to start to reduce consumption, people just get like crazy upset. That doesn't mean that you need to change so drastically your living style. You just reframe and you find new ways to innovate. And this is basically part of the evolution. What you're saying, it just brings me to koalas. I love koalas a lot. And I was just like thinking last night about them. Koalas are a species that adapted to eat only eucalyptus leaves that are toxic and have less nutrients from all of the other leaves. So there are so many interesting aspects about why they did that. And you might consider, okay, are they stupid? They have so many other leaves and other kind of ways to eat and so on. But no, it was part of their survival. And it goes together with the survival of the cheapest, in a sense that there is not much competition for those leaves. Other creatures couldn't manage to find and create a digestive system that can digest properly without dying those kind of toxic leaves. So you see, every time you can see this balance. And if we would just conclude our discussion, we may go overboard just a couple of minutes, and thank you for that. But people just jumped in on LinkedIn. Now we have a huge bigger audience, for example. My conclusion would be from what you said, and then I would listen to all of your conclusions, because we are around innovation and innovation for equity, biomimicry, and tech solutions around the SDGs, and how to accelerate them. Is that, yes, we need to consider all these details, and Divya is perfect to mention all those little things that governance and AIs and tech people many times don't see, and they need to go locally as well around the world. But also, it is very important because in today's era where we are living right now, we cannot think locally anymore. We can adjust locally, but we need to think globally. And so how we can unite the different stories around the world, local stories, for a bigger story, united story for humanity to move further. And I think here we have so many innovations to tackle, consider, and bring in front of humanity to say, yes, this is the road, I can say yes to it. And then align and faster. Divya, what are your final words for today's session? Because we will be back for sure.
For sure. The final words, in order to use diligently the innovation or technology part, we have to first, as humans, we have to be diligent enough. And we should be able to do proper research before we get into any kind of innovation or development. And I won't say at last, but this discussion is too huge and it has to keep on taking place now, every now and then. We have to understand that in order to help humanity, we have to work together. Like you said, it cannot be a local fight, it has to be a global fight. But that global fight also should be in a proper strategic manner to make sure that humanity wins, to make sure that nature and humanity can survive together, and nature and humans can survive together. So all that survival has to be together, even though, if that is like Richard was saying, the survival of the cheapest, yes, but that helps. We have to understand we have to survive together, and that's the only way we can win. Richard?
That should be my mantra, the survival of the cheapest, because there is a running joke that Scottish people are very frugal. So I used to forget my wallet when I used to go out for lunch. So like, oh, there we go, Richard's standard. So I'm the cheapest. But no, it's interesting because what we really touched on there was kind of planetary health. So planetary health is understanding how our health systems are impacted by the environment. As we're getting GDP globally growing, the ecosystem health is collapsing. How can we do both? And it's not just about global governments and all that. It's about little things, about understanding the nuance of educating people about climate impacts can have massive impacts on healthcare for young mothers and these kind of things as well. And it's kind of like, and that's very interesting. The other areas for this really touches on is kind of this, because we are global citizens, is two phrases: telecoupling and telegrabbing. This is understanding the interconnection between what we're using and how it's interconnected. So example, Kit Kats. Whereabouts is all the base foodstock come from to make that? Are we utilizing land in Africa or South America that going into that chocolate and all the other, and the corn and that, are they actually benefiting on the ground there, or is it a monoculture and all the benefits from the land, is it getting going to companies or countries elsewhere as well? And that really kind of, as I promised to Carlos, that's kind of like the Black Eyed Peas, and where is the love? We've got to start showing a bit of love and respect to actually the land and where things are coming from. So if I say to people when they're starting out, start thinking about where everything is coming from. Yeah. And are you actually making a positive impact from across the supply chain, and not just take? It's not just a one-way thing.
And this just brings me that I have another question. I think all of the series will have this question at the end, because it's about matchmaking, and because you are in this room together and I see a lot of synergies. Richard, moving further, how would you want to connect with Divya? What type of projects, what type of next initiatives would you see in your mind that would bring us closer to innovating with biomimicry and tech as well, to solve the SDGs sooner, now that you know her better?
I definitely say we're getting close to publishing our policy recommendation or project in Kerala, and we want to move this forward as actually shaping for fishing, small-scale fishing communities around the world. And actually, is there an integration in there for AI? So it's learning from local communities, learning how they function, what things can they share with others, but then what's also unique as well. And we need to collate all this information together, and that hopefully will allow bring in other partners. I think that's where AI ties into it, because there's going to be a lot of data there that needs to be analyzed and very, very quickly. So that's where, and at some point I do actually want to go to India. I never went to India for that project, so I didn't see the point of somebody living in from Scotland going there to try and tell people there what to do, because they would just laugh at me. And also it's rude, but I do want to go there because I've had a lot of experience with past bunch of interns from India. I was also working previously. One of my clients was one of the founding families of Infosys. So I'm learning a lot about how different places are developing as well. And
Same question.
It also means showing India how good Scottish people are at cricket.
Okay, cool. Cultural exchange. This is very important. Divya, the same question applies to you. What would you do with Richard, who is more efficient, because he can be a survivalist for the cheapest. He doesn't use shampoo. He doesn't need to. So yeah. But what we do with this part, because maybe you use it here, and so you see things are changing, shifting. Okay.
So he talks about survivor of the cheapest. I will then talk about spirituality in that. And please remember, that's not in terms of religion, that's only in terms of gathering peacefulness for our hearts and mind, and a way of surviving all of this together. And why I brought up spirituality is also, I'll explain just within a couple of seconds. I was born in Kashi, Varanasi, which is the spiritual city, spiritual heart of everything we do. And at the end, we believe that that is where you find salvation, that is where you find that peaceful mind. And people are not rushing towards anything, they are just there and they enjoy that particular aspect. And with him, I feel like when he's talking about biomimicry, and that's something which is so important when we talk about nature and climate. I guess all this, the peacefulness will be the final thing which will help us find that particular combination. And really, I would love to welcome him not only in India and Delhi where I practice, that is Supreme Court, but I would love to take him to Varanasi as well. And I hope you will enjoy this space. And currently, I'm here only. The reason why I always say that is because I find it very helpful that you can think beyond limits of humanity, beyond limits of being just human. We were made human for some reason, and I guess we should fulfill that. And we were given diligence and intelligence for a reason. For we can follow any sect, any religion, anything, but at the end we believe that we have to have humanity in our hearts for everyone and for anyone. And that may be for living beings, for animals, for trees, for plants, and everything else around. So yes, that is what I look forward to, and how we can implement AI is, yes, that is the next level, and that is something which will bring probably a least biased society for us.
Not to mention that both of you love humor, and this is a great asset. I mean, you, Divya, when you're talking now, you're very serious because you need to bring legislation, ethics, and laws into the equation. But we can see on your walls that things are much more complete. And Richard, we know that he is just like,
Well, I've got similar signs in my office as well, actually. So I shared with Divya after the last time little pictures of things that I've got. So that was the thing, is like, I want some of those signs.
Yeah, right. So this is the complexity, and this type of human being I would see in that kind of global governance structure who can decide for the benefit of humanity. Thank you so much for being back with us with your wisdom and very, very, very insightful knowledge-based and ideas that we can implement for today. And with that said, TLL-ish people, we are back next week with another matchmaking in heaven. It will be another interesting discussion. And also we will announce the winners for our rewards from the summit. So be here because we will have that raffle and 4 winners will be announced. The same with the climate badges. They were already distributed for those who created and completed the quiz, the climate warrior, the climate guardian quiz, and that revealed a lot of things about you. And so you can still complete that as well. And until then, just keep close. Bring us your ideas. If you want to get involved and you are a doer and an A player, then just get here because we are getting to the next stage. And as you see, we are active. We don't stop with the summit. Things are just starting. And the consensus document will be out also next week. And with that said, have the rest of the week a wonderful one and with many inspirations. And just keep moving to create a better future for us, the humanity, because we are in this together.
In a world yearning for change, there exists a community of visionaries and innovators, united by a common goal to solve Earth's biggest challenges. From climate action to quality education, we're tackling all 17 Sustainable Development Goals reassembled as 10. We embody sustainability, unity, and empathy. Our character and reliability shine as beacons of hope. As role models for future generations, we're building a world where wisdom and consciousness rise, harmonizing life with nature and all species. Join us. Together, let's create a balanced, sustainable future for all.